So hello guys and welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Pascal Floor, and on the other end, it is Steve Hole sitting once again in the kitchen. By the way, I didn't really say that this is not allowed anymore.
No, you haven't. So maybe you need to because then maybe I'd move. But at the moment, it's nice because I get to sit down and I quite like the plain white background. Quite like that. And then also Ada doesn't have to be in her crate. Try and call it a crate and not cage, because cage sounds really mean. Whereas when it's a crate, it doesn't sound so bad. Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to dogs and cats, right? I mean, it is kind of a little bit egoistic. I always wanted a dog as well, but I knew that I couldn't take care of a dog in the sense of committing time when I was single and stuff like that. And many people do, and then they end up with having a dog sitter like 5 days out of the week. And in my opinion, I don't think that this is then the right thing to do. But then you can question yourself, like, okay, is owning a dog ever the right thing in doing? If you're already a little bit in doubt about these kind of things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's people. Like, I feel bad sometimes that she's like lying there and just sleeping, and I'm like, oh, she wants me to play with her, but I'm doing work. And then I think, actually, you think how many people probably own dogs and leave them all day and aren't with them until they come home from work. So in reality, it's not it's not the worst life. But yeah, I think if there are what I've realized, there's categories, and I thought there was just like small, medium, large dogs, but there's actually toy dogs now.
Toy dogs?
These are like the smallest of the small dogs, and these are basically bred to be like pillows, and you just stroke them, and they're just there as like a lap dog. Yeah,
but nothing like a Chihuahua.
Maybe like a Chihuahua. Like, they're tiny, aren't they? So maybe, but they're not very hairy. Whereas there's like, I think they're like Poms.
I even never understood. Oh, yeah, I know those. Yeah, absolutely.
They're soft.
I would assume that their life expectancy is actually fairly low because they have been overly, what is it called again? Genetically modified. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure what their lifespan is. I don't know what it's called, but I don't know what their lifespan is. I think maybe 8 years or something like that.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No,
absolutely not. By the way, I just wanted to clarify one thing, because Drew, one of my clients, actually reached out to me and said, like, Pascal, did you forget about the Killing Joke? So a Joker or a Batman comic, I think in the 80s or 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a backstory of the Joker. So, I just wanted to clarify, because in the last episode, I was saying, like, I can't recall that there ever was a backstory, which is not completely true. The Killing Joke, a very, very kind of very famous comic book, actually. There was it. I think he was an engineer and his family got killed or so, something like that. And I just very much remember the end, because Batman and the Joker made a joke and they both laughed. And then Batman killed the Joker. I think he broke his neck or so. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up for clarification.
I think it was because you watched some like Joker reviews or something. So then I started, and it came recommended on our YouTube channel. So I started watching. I watched like 4, and in some of those they were like, yeah. And then I feel like I'm an expert now. And in some of those they said the Joker had like a mysterious backstory. So I think you have to be a real expert.
I know that in the show Gotham, which is basically a show adaptation of the entire story before Batman. There was also the origins of the Joker, but nothing related to the Killing Joke. There in the Gotham series, I think he was growing up in a circus, and he had a twin brother who was actually a very smart individual who then, I don't know, inhaled some kind of gas that made him laugh the entire time and also a little bit insane. I mean, yeah, it is and stays a mystery.
I have nothing to flow into a new discussion. How has your week been, Pascal?
Yeah, it was the third week of the mesocycle, and I have to say, like, training is going so well. It's I don't know. I'm very much enjoying training at the moment. The sessions are, I don't know why, but much longer than before. Even though that I didn't really add any kind of significant amount of volume. I did a little bit of a different setup though. I have now an upper lower split. Yeah, and it just takes me a little bit longer this time around. Don't know why. Because there's not really that much of a difference to an upper lower push pull legs or so. I mean, it's nearly the same amount of volume. A little bit more for the upper body though.
I was going to say, did you just spread your volume over more, or did you add a little bit because now you're hitting everything with a bit more frequency?
I added a little bit because per session I can then do a little bit more with a better quality per rep and per set. And because I'm then doing like upper instead of just like a push or a pull, I have the feeling that it's just a little bit better for me. But I can also feel that, I don't know, so it's more enjoyable for me, to be honest. And it feels very productive, but it could also be just because I'm enjoying it a little bit more. So I don't know. I have to see how it actually turns out to be.
Yeah, it's always nice changing, even if it's just frequency. Like, it's just nice as a bit of a like switch it up. Like, you'd probably done your previous split for so long. Like, I'd done push-pull legs for so long. Doing then upper-lower was like, oh, I get to do like upper again, and it's only been a day. And like, this is pretty unique.
It is so crazy. The pumps that you get in your arms, because you're doing already like pushes, pulls, which take a very much toll on your biceps and triceps already. When you're then doing a little bit of additional isolation work for both, at the same time, and not just on a push day where you're then, I don't know, doing a little bit more of a tricep. The arms, I'm getting out and my arms are still shaking a little bit. And when it's still warm-up side, I'm wearing my leather jacket for the bike, right? And this one is a little bit more snug because this is how you actually wear a leather jacket. And sometimes it's just like hard to get into the leather jacket because my arms are still so swollen.
Nice.
Yeah, nice feeling to have. I mean... Yeah.
My only comparison is I was wearing a large Revive hoodie and I moved to an extra large, but my extra large is now in the wash. So I've been putting my large back on and I'm like, this is hard to get on. But it's nice when it takes a long time, I think, to grow like out of clothes. But it's nice when you notice, even actually, it's something I noticed even over the past month where my weight has basically stayed the same at 200. Yeah. But I think back and I don't think I'd ever been a true 200 and held it because I kind of got there and then I mini cut, I think. And then I got back up there and then I went through a maintenance period and I didn't maintain 200. Whereas now I have maintained 200 for the past month, basically. And although the scale therefore hasn't really changed, clothes are fitting differently, and unfortunately I'll have to say this, my belt, I'm to the next buckle on like my weightlifting belt. I'd stayed in contest prep, I got to the last hole and I could probably go smaller, and I'd stayed one above that my entire off season.
Crazy. That's very good actually.
But now I think it's partly down to fat accumulation and partly down to like when you're eating so much, you have a little bit of food in your stomach, like it feels like all the time. So I can't go as tight. So I probably have gained some fat there. Well, I have certainly gained some fat there, but I've come to the next. So I think despite not scale going up, I think body comp has been changing, hopefully mostly for the positive.
I think it's a good variable to track as well, or at least to be aware of how snug or how loosely your clothes fit. Because sometimes every other variable isn't, I don't know, moving into the right direction or staying the same, but the clothes fit differently. It isn't always happening, but every once in a while having a look out for that as well may be beneficial. And I think we are talking about that every single year at least once. I actually received a package from ASOS here today because I wanted to have some new pants. So I ordered 3 pants, and it's always the same thing. It is kind of Groundhog Day, right? That each and every single time I'm ordering something at ASOS, I receive the package, I try it on and nothing fits me. Nothing fits me, and I have to send it back and be frustrated again. It is every single time like that. And I came to the conclusion that ACEs, the models, and the fit is simply not made for people who are training. Even if they claim like muscular fit or sports fit and stuff like that, doesn't work. I had those pants on. They were large already, and normally I'm not wearing large pants. I normally wear like medium sized. And the legs made it. It was crazier than those compression pants from Reebok. I could hardly get them on, and I was just like, okay, this isn't working. I have to send it back again.
Were they jeans or
no, just like
chinos?
Yeah, just sports joggers. Yeah, I don't know.
Joggers would be all right. They're skin tight, crazy.
Yeah, but it's too.
Were
tight.
they tapered, fitted ones? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Down. So on the calves, they were supposed to be a little bit more snug, and yeah, on the quads and the thighs, they were supposed to sit a little bit more loosely. But I can't confirm that this was actually the case. They were like skinny jeans on my entire body, or the lower body.
I found I just like wearing shorts in my off season. It's just so much easier just to wear shorts all the time.
So I was always wearing skinny jeans back in the days, and I was always saying, like, even when skinny jeans weren't trendy anymore, I was saying like, once skinny jeans, always skinny jeans. I very much stepped away from that because it's not comfortable at all anymore, especially now. I'm mostly just wearing sports clothing, which is, I don't know, just the most comfortable there is.
100% is. The only unfortunate thing is it's not so socially acceptable. So if you're going out for dinner with Katie, she probably would be like.
And that's why I wanted those new joggers, because they were they looked, how should I put it, more acceptable
probably to us
for daily living. But yeah, didn't work out. So I need to send it back once again and wear my typical stuff, which I have. So
I will say the only jeans I've been wearing these jeans a lot. They're by Legend London. I don't know if you can get those, but
I probably can.
They do like skinny ones, which I have, but they're like skin tight and they get a bit uncomfortable around the groin. But then they have straight leg ones, which are also quite skinny, but they fit much. They don't look super skinny.
What I always wanted to try is these muscular brands such as Fathers and Sons, which is, by the way, the most hilarious thing to watch their ads and then read the comment section. Just hilarious. What people then comment on the pictures, because those pictures are quite hilarious with those models, right? And the skin tight shirts and stuff like that. But anyway, I always wanted to try those brands like Legend London, Father and Sons. What else is there? I don't even know all those brands.
Hera, a lot of people are wearing Hera. Is that how you say it? Don't know. Hera?
If people know of any brands that are good and you've tried it, please put it into the comment section below, because I know that everyone is looking for stuff to wear when you're actually lifting and you can't fit into proper clothing anymore, especially like shirts and stuff like that. Very hard to find something proper, especially for weddings and stuff. Ugh.
Oh, yeah, you have to get. I remember Dan, Big Dan. Shout out to Big Dan Smith. He had to get his suit fitted like several times because of the fact. I think he got it fitted like around his post show, and it was like, well, I'm going to be quite a bit bigger by the time my wedding comes around. So, that's. Where I was going to say. I've completely forgotten. Oh no, yeah, it's Thomas Moore, TMC Cycles. He always talks about Primark skinny girl jeans and wearing those.
Heard it as well, yeah.
I've never trialed it because there's something inherently off-putting about buying women's clothes. I don't know why.
I've done it in the past. Like there was a time where, so I was growing up near the Danish border, and the trend in Denmark was at a very, very, very early age, let's say, they already were skin tight jeans, so skinny jeans and stuff like that. Also stretchy skinny jeans. And in Germany, you couldn't get that, right? So The only thing that you could get were like skinny tight jeans for females, and this is what I bought like all the time. So yeah, most of the time they don't sit as well on around the hip area and the groin, especially because it's just a little bit shorter, and then you have to pull up the pants, and Michael Jackson yeehaw then.
Yeah, you have to tuck it to the side.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also very snug around that area, and people can see what you're wearing. And I mean, what the pistol that you're wearing, whether it is a mini pistol or a AK-47.
This is why you have to wear those with a big, huge T-shirt that's like a tent, so it covers everything.
Yeah, that's true. True. I have one of those shirts that's basically going to my knees. I don't know. I've once bought it, and I think I wore it twice or so, and never then again, because I felt like a little bit idiotic with that.
It's like a dress, basically.
Yeah, it is. And I just shown it because I found it here just like a couple of days ago, because I was going through my dresser, and I was just like, okay, Katie, what do you think about that shirt? Put it on, and she was like, what even is this?
An apron.
Yeah.
I always hope that like Nike and Adidas will just do like a casual smart range or something, because I'm like, that clothing generally fits quite well. Like T-shirts fit quite well.
I mean, Adidas has that.
It's probably expensive.
I don't know whether it is more something that we are interested in, because what I know, that there's even a store in Berlin that only sells like stuff like this. I think it's called Adidas Classic, but I'm not entirely certain. Could very well be. And this is more like in the range of like, I don't know, rap, hip hop style.
Oh, right. That's me all over.
I know.
I'm into the actually Mexican music.
By the way, before we actually then finally move over and stop our rambling and move over to the questions, I yesterday saw a video of a guy who's a comedian, and he's the best freestyle rapper there is. I mean, honestly, I've never seen anyone better. And he has a comedy show. And whenever he is doing his comedy show, he's asking around for words in the audience, like also ridiculous words, right? And then he is rapping for like 3 minutes and does a freestyle rap, and it's just mind-blowing. Like, honestly, I was watching that video, I was just like thinking, how is that even freaking possible? And that is not like pre-planned or so. And it's just like, holy shit, mate, what is going on?
Reminded me of 8 Mile.
Yeah. And the
cool
people in the comment section said, like, because there was the video description said like, white rapper, no, the best freestyle rapper you've ever seen, and then white rapper. Also, right? And someone in the comment section said like, okay, it's not early 2000s anymore. We know that there are other white rappers except for Eminem out there. So yeah.
True. So yeah, we on to questions. Is it that time? Yeah. I don't think I have anything else interesting to say about my week. It's deload.
I've seen that. So yeah, let's move over to the questions. So Andrew first and foremost, if you want to submit any kind of questions, feel free to join our Facebook group. We always ask for questions there, sometimes a little bit later than sooner. And today it was a little bit late, but we still got a couple of questions in. And the first one is from...
Was there any Patreon supporters? Did we get any?
No, I can't see
that. They get prioritized, by the way. So
this time there weren't. So Andrew Flounder said, and he asked the question already, I think a couple of weeks back, could taking TMG, betaine, for its osmolyte properties during a peak week to potentially enhance water stored in the muscle be a viable option for natural bodybuilders? Has it been tried before?
So yes, I recognize this question because I recognize seeing it and not saying it, because it was something that I was like, I'm not sure if either of I should have said it because you might have a good answer for this. I personally don't. It's not something I've looked into much at all. If ever, I've heard of the supplement, but I don't know much about it. What I do know is that you will have wanted to trial it. It's not going to make a huge difference because it's something that from the people I deem top natural kind of peaking experts like Cliff, 3DMJ, Eric Helms, that sort of people. I've never heard them kind of quote it as something that they use. I might be wrong there, but I've never heard them talk about it as something that's a big deal. Supplement's never going to be a big deal, but I would trial it if you are going to do it, and see how you respond to it, because you don't want to try chucking something in just off the cuff and new. But I don't know if you have anything more about it.
No, would have been my answer as well. I mean, give it a try, see whether this has actually a positive impact on your physique. If not, don't just experiment then with the water, or try to manipulate it to a beneficial outcome with water. It's most of the time actually you can easily burn yourself, and most of the time it's not worth the reward. But give it a try. I mean, if you have a couple of weeks before a show and you're lean enough to actually see those visual changes, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think it was glycerol, I think is something that some people try and take to like manipulate water and look better. And I think it's in some like pump up formulas pre-workout. And I bought it because I'd heard it talked about, and I spoke to Broderick about it. And he was like, you can trial it, but if you trial it, then probably it's like once you've trialed it, your body has had that response to it, and now it probably won't work as well the next time, so you can't have a predictable response from it. And that's him coming from like a biology background, in that the body won't respond the same way every time. And so I ended up not using it, because I was like, my physique looks good enough without trying something just for the sake of it. Might add 0.01% or something, and it could detract 5% or something. So take that for what it is.
Absolutely. So, moving over to the next question. That is from Muffins Pizzikas. When we lose weight during our cutting phases and we hit a stall, due to the benefits of a higher carbohydrate intake for recovery and performance due to and in the gym, if fats are already at their minimum recommended intake, can we take calories away by subtracting from protein due to our body weight? For example, at the beginning of our cutting phase, we may have sat at 190 pounds, having 190 grams of protein, and we are now 175 pounds.
Cool. So yeah, absolutely. I think you can, especially if at that point you're not needing it for satiety, and it's not going to be a make or break about adherence, because protein is the most satiating out of all of them. I would at that point certainly look to take down protein over carbohydrates, because assuming your carbohydrates are getting quite low, if you've already lost 20 pounds and you're still looking to diet, I imagine you're at quite a deep diet and your performance is at like potential being lost quite easily. So keeping as many carbohydrates as possible makes complete sense in a scenario where you're kind of overeating on protein from a like standpoint of not considering adherent.
My take is maybe a little bit different. I think, yes, you can definitely take away from protein if you want to actually get the benefits of a higher or increased performance in the gym, because we know that performance is definitely the main driver to retain muscle mass while in a cutting phase. Well, protein plays a part in that as well. Having a sufficient protein intake is definitely mandatory. But the thing is, going from something like 190 grams of protein to something like 175 grams, while then having a higher performance output, is probably worth the trade-off. That being said, though, depending on the severity of the cut, how lean you are, we always need to take muscle protein breakdown into consideration as well. And I think, or I would assume, that the lower you're going in regards to protein, the less beneficial it may be for muscle protein synthesis and a positive or net positive muscle protein synthesis to actually then also maintain or retain the muscle mass. So I would assume that the performance is a bigger driver, but still we need to have a little bit of a fine balance there. And I think that you should be cautious with that, right? Because it could very well be that it turns out that your performance is still decreasing, and now you took a little bit away from the amino acids that are essential to also then retain the muscle mass, and now you are actually in a worse position, right? Because you actually took away more protein and the performance is still decreasing. So there's always a potential risk to that that option or outcome.
Yeah, I think it's a sticky situation either way, isn't it? When you get to that point. Cool. I got nothing else.
So Brett Freeman, thoughts on specialization blocks of training if you can't work through landmarks for all muscles at once. Time constraint.
Cool. So this isn't Brett Freeman, our WMBF lightweight pro friend, who I don't know if Brett listens to these, but this is Brett Freeman, our friend who actually, I think he lives in Vauxhall.
He's in London.
So yeah, Brett I've seen him a few times at the gym, but he doesn't tend to train there anyway.
And doesn't tend to say hello to you as well. Just kind of
just ignores me. Just puts me on his Instagram stories and zooms into my arms and it's like, oh, check the bicep. But
with heavy breathing in the background.
So, all right. Brett, I think in a scenario that he's described there, it's almost like, I wouldn't say you have no other option, but it's certainly a good option when you're constrained by time to train all of your muscle group. Even if theoretically you could train every muscle group from MEV to MRV, if you're time constrained so you can't do that, it's kind of the same as having a constraint of systemic MRV, so you can't train everything up to MEV to MRV. The answer is the same. The option is to specialize or get some growth from everything. If you can train that way, it might be more efficient to focus on and specialize on certain muscle groups during that period of time.
I'm just thinking, how long is that time restraint for? Maybe it is only a certain amount of time, like 4 weeks or so. Then yeah, maybe use some other techniques in your training that are saving some time, such as supersets. I don't know, maybe also myo reps or so, that you still can actually get a decent amount of volume in. If that's not possible, then I would always go back to what Steve has said.
Cool.
So our man Andrew Potacek, is he actually called that?
Oh, I am embarrassed to say I'm so bad with names. I don't even try Andrew's last name. 3 years, still can't pronounce. I just call him my vascular buddy.
Potacek. So Andrew Potacek, what are you go-to things to do when you hit a low mentally and get down? What brings you back up?
It's a really cool question, actually. Very broad, because I think that can be more than just training, more than just nutrition. It can expand to your entire life. And I think everyone listening to this goes through these moments. I certainly do. We've expressed them to each other, in fact. And it's difficult. I've never had it spiral to a point where it just keeps going down. Normally, it's like I don't know, I don't know if this is the right way to call it, but it's like a man period or something. It just comes around every few months and I just have this down moment because you just think about life and you kind of question life and what's this all about. And I think just getting back into the things that you really love and enjoy and having gratitude for that and being with loved ones and talking to them and having a human connection really helps, I find. And having people in your life you can trust and actually speak freely to and do those sort of things and stick to your routine and your habits. Don't let all of your structure just completely go because you're feeling down, because I think that's when the problem starts to arise, is when you just let everything in your life crumble and then you have nothing to fall back to. So yeah, some gratitude, some human connection, give yourself a bit of break and have a think about where your life is. And I don't know if maybe there's more. When you start saying something, Pascal, I might have more to say on it, but I think that's
I really wanted to say something smart, but I really can't. So the thing is that exactly this was also discussed in the book, You're Not So Smart. Why people have times where they feel down, but then very, very quickly reverse out of that. Like, I'm saying this, of course, always on a general basis. There are, of course, people who are dealing with depressions, where it's not that easy, where it's not just like, I don't know, a week where you're feeling quote unquote down, but it's a severe depression or so, where they are just like not capable of doing anything. But when it was happening to me, happened a couple of times, especially when it comes to insecurities, unpredictable situations, what is happening in the future, taking risks maybe, right, where a lot is on the line, for example. It can be then at times very overwhelming. And I had a couple of times in the past also, I would even contribute that to being lonely, because I was always single, and when no one was around me, and I was always like focusing on work and my training as well, and there was a time where I didn't really socialize a lot, and thus these were the times where I was thinking about things very, very much, and also having then times where I was overly thinking of things because I had too much time, right? And these were the moments where I was just like a little bit lost and down. And what brought me back up, to be very honest, just continue living life. I know that sounds ridiculous, right? But from a psychological perspective, many people will then have, once again, moments where things are brighter again, unless you have like a clinical condition of massive depression or so, or that life is so hard that there's always something externally that is bringing you down and you can't help it or can't do anything about it or against that, right? But to be honest, I just lived my life, and after a while it just got better.
Yeah, I think you said something that I also talked about, was like the human connection thing in terms of being lonely, because I think that's normally why I end up feeling the way I end up feeling now and then, is because being self-employed, working from home, don't really get much proper human interaction on a daily basis. And so it helped me kind of reaching out to others and just having a bit of a social life, doing more on the weekends, that sort of thing can help. And I think that human connection can't be discounted. Just being able to actually talk to people, even if that's just over social media, because it can get the loneliness, I think, is a big aspect for especially people who are probably listening to this, who are very much like bodybuilding and physique development is quite a selfish thing. It's not like you're doing it with a team. You're doing it on your own. So I can see how isolating it could be.
And mate, a human being, it is just in our nature to socialize. Even those who don't want to be in big rounds, that doesn't mean that you are not a social person anymore. That just means that it is you maybe don't enjoy like big events, big social events or so, but imagining not having anyone at all, most of the time that is just like psychologically so demanding for people, because we are just social creatures, and we are driven to be liked, and also to be appreciated by other people, and also contribute to a bigger good. This is just how humans are, right? And if you're then lonely, it can really get to you. And I mean, I could speak for myself, and even though that I would not deem myself as the most social person there is, and I always thought like, I don't want to make it out like I think that is a good thing, but I always thought that I'm a lonely wolf, right? I strive of doing my own thing, which is to some extent true, but that doesn't mean that you can't have any kind of social connections at all, because that is most of the time, I think, just too demanding for people.
And like you said, sometimes when you're on your own so much, you get in your own head, you start questioning things a lot. And when you're with other people, it gets you out of your own head, and you end up kind of just taking it off your mind, which can be like massively powerful. So even if that's just a phone call to someone, like it's surprising how much that can really like bring you up sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, I think we answered it okay.
Yeah. And don't listen to any kind of heartbreaking songs in that time, because it just makes matters worse.
I can see that.
Berlin, Take My Breath Away. Do, 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 do. A beautiful song. Anyway, Fahim Chauhan, implications of the majority of weekly volume created via dropsets.
Cool. So I think this is an interesting question, and this is my like initial response when I saw this was that short term I could see it working, but long term I could see it being quite fatiguing and not being very productive. When I think about like drop sets. I think about being close to failure. I think about them being hard to progress upon in terms of like log booking and being able to like properly progress your lifts. So I think in the short term, they can be quite like a powerful tool, and maybe using them every like few mesocycles. Like we like to implement kind of metabolite work every few mesocycles, which I kind of put down sets into, where you kind of pre-fatigue and then you're going into them, similar to, I think someone commented like myo reps and things like that. I think they're more of a short-term strategy to get more volume in rather than a consistent strategy to use long-term, just because I think the body probably adapts to them quite well, and they're harder to progress in the way that you do like standard training. I don't know if you have more on that.
Just to add on something, because there was already a little bit of back and forth between Mark and Fahim, and he was also referring to people or time restricted clients, and whether it is kind of appropriate in that kind of
cool. Yeah, so you brought it up with Brett, where you were saying time restricted, and you brought up supersets, and that's antagonistic. Supersets is probably what I would go to first, where you can do like a bench press and then do like a machine row and do like some bicep work, then some tricep work. I think that's probably better bang for your buck. And then if like push comes to shove, and maybe it's just a month where you have this, like, yeah, you can put in some drop sets. I think that can be powerful. I don't really think, well, actually, no, I do think training studies that have shown drop sets to be like hypertrophic and like, I don't know, maybe count as a hard set, they've never been done long term. They're always short term studies, like weeks, not months upon months. So I would think that it isn't a long term strategy, at least.
Also, you brought it up with logging the training and keeping track of the progress. At some point, you could end up going down a rabbit hole in the sense of, okay, I didn't progress here last week, let's just add another drop set, right? And then you go lower and lower, and at some point, I just think that it's then becoming junk volume, where the intensity isn't high enough to induce a high enough stressor for hypertrophy, but you're just doing more of fatigue accumulation, all right? Because you thought like, okay, last week didn't progress as well, let's just add another one. And at some point, yeah, the threshold of intensity is just too low to induce a proper stimulus anymore.
That makes sense. When you think about, I think it's like 30% of your 1 rep max is seen to be as light as you can go, so long as you go close to failure and see a hypertrophic response. So if you're dropping, like if you keep dropping, like, yeah, you could fall out of that 30% zone. And I think you'd probably notice it as well. I think you probably end up doing a set and being like, I kind of failed, but my muscle doesn't feel like it really did anything. It just kind of feels kind of tired, not pumped and good.
Absolutely. So John Cunningham. Oh, wait a second. Oh, there's a long one. With the example of a mesocycle.
Oh God.
So let me try to read it first and see whether we can answer that, because I find it always hard when someone is giving the example of like a lot of numbers and stuff like that. It's very hard to actually then, but just by listening, get the example in your head. Hey guys, long time listener, first time poster. What are your thoughts on reducing axial loading throughout the meso, or even a couple of mesos, as accumulative fatigue builds up to avoid injury, but increasing total volume? For example, meso 1 squats 12 sets per week, lunges 4 sets per week, 16 total sets. Meso 2 squats 8 sets per week, lunges 6 sets per week, leg extensions 4 sets per week, 18 total sets, etc., etc. So you get the idea. Squats lowering, and then bring up accessory movements or other movements that aren't really as fatiguing. And then, is this a good way to increase total volume while reducing axial loading, or am I missing out by not increasing squat volume? Apologies for the long post. Enjoy the content.
Cool. So no, I think that's a really clever question, because I think as you're training with volume over time, it becomes more and more fatiguing, but you kind of need more over time because you adapt to it. And so by incorporating lower axial loading movements, you kind of open up the ability to do a little bit more volume, because potentially the stimulus to fatigue ratio is a little bit more in your favor. And if you're not time limited, then that can be really powerful. Like a leg extension might have a pretty shitty like stimulus to time ratio, but if you have loads of time, then it might have a really good kind of stimulus to fatigue ratio and be a great movement for you to start putting in, whereas squats might start beating you up so much. So I don't know if you necessarily want to decrease your squatting. I don't know if that's the answer, but I do think incorporating movements that have like lower SFRs as you're going through mesocycles makes good rationale, especially because I tend to like kind of focusing on a higher and higher repetition range as I go through mesocycles, focusing on 5 to 10, kind of going to 10 to 20, 20 to 30 maybe, like that. It makes sense to have like the more isolation-y movements in there that have a lower fatigue cost and focus on the higher repetition ranges. So no, I think that makes good sense. I think it would need to be individualized. I think some like less advanced people would still maybe want to prioritize those kind of really time efficient, really stimulative, and probably not for that fatiguing because they're not that strong at the squats and compound movements. But for someone advanced, I think that sort of strategy sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain, to be honest. I think that the idea behind it is very, very good and also very clever to go that far in the way of thinking about programming. But I think that there are two ways to think about it, in my opinion. So the first one is, what will a leg extension added in the second or third week? Let's just assume that you're always then changing something or adding something.
Doing them? Sorry. Is he doing them every week? He's adding things? Or is it mesocycle to mesocycle?
Oh, no, it's mesocycle. Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
Week to week, I wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah. What the thing is that, of course, I would always think about then, it's like you said, from mesocycle to mesocycle, maybe adding some more, right? This is what we're always like chasing or trying to accomplish. Thing is, though, that you could always work. So what we are always incorporating are rep ranges. So why not keep the same amount and trying to do a little bit more in regards to the rep ranges? Up until the point where just the axial loading or the stimulus to fatigue ratio is just getting so high that it simply doesn't make sense to squat that much anymore. Then I think that something like the mesocycle 2 setup is very good. And then you can start to add from there. So in my opinion, I wouldn't do it like this, that mesocycle 1 is the way it is, then mesocycle 2 and mesocycle 3, or rather more so do it like this, that milk the mesocycle 1 gains for as long as possible up until the point where it's getting too much of a fatigue accumulated and damp or hampers your accumulation of volume. Then move over to something like mesocycle 2, milk out those gains, kind of. So not just in mesocycle 2, but more so like in maybe an entire macrocycle or so, right? Because I just don't think that one mesocycle is necessary or needed or enough to actually then see an adaptation or a rapid increase where the accumulated fatigue is just overwhelming. Then I would assume that you're already starting off with too much axial loading or stimulus to fatigue ratio being not in favor of the stimulus. Do you agree on that one, Steve?
I think particularly for less advanced people,
I would assume that it's more like over the entirety of a couple of macro cycles, where then you have to figure out, or after a couple of years even, where then a squat becomes too much of a fatiguing compartment in the entirety of the program, so that you then need to reconsider instead of on a mesocycle to mesocycle basis. And then in that sense, I would question whether the 16 sets with 12 sets coming from squats and 4 sets coming from lunges is still superior than something like 8 sets of squats, 6 sets of lunges, and 4 sets of leg extensions. I'm not entirely certain. While yes, it is more hard sets, they aren't created equal. And thus, I don't know what may be more effective in regards to hypertrophy. And that's why I'm a little bit skeptical about that approach. I think that in it for itself, the idea is great. I think, though, that it is probably more spread out over the entirety of a career to do it like this instead of the entirety of a macro cycle.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anything else to add?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I think it made sense. I like it.
All right, but yeah, John, if you want to get back in the group on this, or have a further discussion about this, feel free to post it in the group. I think it's very interesting, and I would like to hear other opinions as well. Nate Joseph, have you changed your mind at all on effective reps after all of its recent criticism?
It's interesting because I don't know if we ever stated our opinion on it. Did you ever state your opinion on it?
I think I did, but not really that much in depth. It was more like, yeah, here, Mike, we had Mike on, and Greg Knuckles did a fantastic article about it, but I don't really think that I ever did that, at least not publicly.
Where did effective reps originally come from? Because I know Carl Juno talked about them, but also they're kind of, in essence, part of my reps. So Bjorg Fagerli talked about them, but then also James Krieger talked about kind of, he had like his effective reps model. And then obviously it became much more popular because Chris Beardsley started talking about it as well. I don't know why Chris made it so popular, but it seemed to be that way. I don't even know where it originated from, but... I
think Greg is actually talking about it in his article.
Okay.
If I do remember correctly.
I did open up Greg's article and I intended to read it. And I didn't read it all
because
it's quite long.
Because it was fantastic. And I just wanted to actually read through it, what his thoughts are, what the actual literature is, because I wasn't really certain about that. And yeah, it's an amazing article, which I can only recommend reading.
But yeah, from my discussions with Mike, we talked about it twice. It sounds like Mike and Greg see eye to eye, and I can't see kind of my opinion being different to theirs.
I always was a little bit skeptical. So I was skeptical in the sense that there's only a certain amount of reps that actually induce a certain amount of hypertrophy. I was always skeptical about that, because it was like, okay, that would mean that all the other reps that led to those effective reps are useless, which doesn't really make sense to me, right? Because one are necessary for the other, so to speak. Yes, you could always do like work in the range of like 85% of your 1 rep max, but how fatiguing is that? Is very inefficient, to be rather honest, especially, or at least in the sense of hypertrophy, to always be in that department, especially for other muscle groups or certain exercises. So never really made that much sense to me. And what Greg then did, and also Mike when he was on our podcast, was just like more so clarifying my thoughts, which I couldn't really bring that well, or could have never brought that well to paper, such as Greg did, or could have never actually talked out loudly, such as eloquently as Mike did. But it really just confirmed my views and actually added even more skepticism on the concept than there was before, for me at least.
The thing I really like that Mike alluded to, and it makes complete sense when you think about it, was that even those effective reps aren't all as effective as one another, in that it's like they get more effective and then it kind of peters off as you get towards failure. So even that knowledge, and then he combined that with think about the fatigue that brings, and then you have to take that in consideration. So I think the key take home I'd give people is like, it's not black and white. You can't just think of effective reps and that's all you think about with your programming, because there's so many other variables to play with that. But it's funny because something I found interesting was that I did see people who were very kind of pro-failure talking about effective reps and using that as an argument of why you have to train really hard. But the effective reps isn't saying that you have to do, it's like saying there's the 5 effective reps or something. So, but typically people who are training to failure think that like it's that failure that's so important. But then they're saying there's 4 more effective reps there. So it kind of is like, I don't know, it seems to contradict itself when people who are proponents of failure were then saying, oh, but the effective reps, like that's why we have to train to failure. It's like, well, why can't you cash in 4 of them and not get so fatigued by doing that 5th one? Maybe that 5th one isn't as important as maybe you think it is. But anyway, that's besides the point. No, absolutely agree. And it's like the contradiction which we brought up like the last week already, of the people were saying like, people don't know how to train to failure, and right,
that's why they have to train to failure, because they don't know how to train to failure. And then all of a sudden they are the ones who are training to failure, which is like a little bit ironic in it for itself. But what I wanted to say there in the same breath as well is we kind of already slowly know that the difference between something like 2 reps in reserve and 0 reps in reserve is probably not that high. It's the same what you brought up, that it's probably on a curve, and then at some point the closer you're getting to failure, the less you get in return. But the fatigue that you're accumulating is just a steep curve upwards. So in that same breath, right, it may be more. I'm even quite slowly. I'm becoming more and more convinced, or at the moment, I'm convinced that it's maybe a little bit more or better to stay away from failure, at least like in the range of 1 to 3 repetitions, and occasionally go to failure on something like single joint or isolationist kind of movements. It may be maybe granted to go there every once in a while, maybe on the last set of an exercise or so, because the risk isn't really there. And also, if there is a small reward that we maybe don't know about as of yet, you are still ensuring that you're going there every once in a while. And I find it funny because people, when we are talking about, for example, adding volume or leaving reps in reserve, people always assume that it's an either or camp, where it's just like, okay, you're always leaving reps in reserve, so you're a pussy, or you're going absolutely to failure. Why not use both things, right? Where you are leaving reps in reserve for the first initial sets and then go closer and closer to failure, such as we do and also promote. And it is kind of straw manning our opinion about failure, because so many people think that we never go to failure, but we may be not going as often to failure as they are, but we use it more like sparingly and in certain situations. Because I do go to failure, and this is not just like a common thing. I go regularly to failure, but it's more like on certain occasions, such as what I brought up the last set, for example, of single joint exercises, week number 4, where you can crush yourself because the next week is a deload. But I always try to reserve myself so that I'm still able to get in a productive session, that I'm not impacting my consecutive sets negatively, and also that I don't run into the risk of higher injury risk or so.
This is where my analogy to Goku going, or even Vegeta, but did Vegeta ever do it? I'm not sure. Super Saiyan 3, where obviously...
I've never seen it. Maybe he went Super Saiyan 3 in a movie or so, because I didn't see all the movies, but in the show, I'd never seen it. But I also have to say, I never watched DB, so Dragon Ball GT, never watched it. So it could very well be that it happened there. I don't know.
I don't remember it, but it's for our Dragon Balls listeners, Super Saiyan 3 I kind of quoted as being similar to failure in that you don't get that much from it and it's so fatiguing. Maybe you're just better off going Super Saiyan 2, which is like 1 to 2 reps reserve. So basically you are referring to the Majin Buu saga. Yeah. Where he gets the huge eyebrows and the long hair. It's so bad.
But he didn't have any kind of eyebrows. He only gets like he just gets a thick brow. Like just thick skin in that department. Like muscular skin, which is then kind of the replacement for eyebrows.
It's so weird. I can't remember. I think I had something else to say, but I can't really remember.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Oh, this is what I was going to say. I don't know about you, Pascal, but I have got to the point now with most exercises where I know I cannot do another rep. Where I categorically know if I went for another rep, I'd be doing it just so that I could say I failed on it.
Yeah.
Like I just know it wouldn't happen.
I'm very good at it when it comes to incline bench pressing, where I just can say like, okay, this last rep felt good, but I know that the next one will be a very, very hard challenge. And without a spotter, I'm not going for it.
Like you'll either get it, but it will look bad, and potentially there's like a 50-50. Like I did it on my last push, particularly push movements. With pulling movements, I think I probably quite often do, and people probably do go past or to failure because it's easy to safely go to that point because you just use the momentum or tweak it a little bit.
Round the shoulders a little bit, involve the arms a little bit more.
But like with pressing movements particularly, I did it because I wanted 110 for, I think it was 9 reps. I wanted to get that 9th rep, but I know looking back, it was an okay rep, but it was risky and it was not worth the cost trade benefit. It's not like that. If I didn't get that rep, then I wouldn't have got any hypertrophic stimulus, or because I got that rep, I grew like 5 times more. Not at all. It was just ego. That's the only reason I went for it. And I shouldn't have done it in hindsight. I'm lucky that I didn't injure myself.
And this is so funny because it's ironic in and for itself as well, because there are other people who are saying like, this is exactly the rep that you should have pushed for to actually get the most out of the set.
But when you think about it, it was less controlled. Like the tension wasn't very good compared to my other repetitions. Is exactly the rep I probably shouldn't have taken.
Yeah.
That's the scary part, isn't it?
So ever since Alberto said that quote, that is just like, I think one of the best quotes in the fitness industry. I mean, one rep can break you, but it won't make you. Right. And this can hold true to the entirety of training programming. Like one set won't make you, but it can break you. And then something like one session, right? And 1 week, stuff like that, right? So yeah, I think this quote is just fantastic.
I think it's really hard because bodybuilders, and I do myself, find they almost derive self-worth from being able to go there and being able to train hard. And when people question if you're training your hardest or if like you're leaving reps, like you're not doing your hardest, why are you not like leaving everything there in like your training session? Because we know why we aren't, because we're trying to be rational and thinking about long-term progression. But your kind of, I guess, monkey bodybuilding brain is like, no, just fucking take it there and trash yourself, because surely that's the best way to do it. And I find myself sometimes falling for it, like I did that rep, because I just wasn't thinking very rationally. I was more so thinking on like short-term wants.
Yeah. I mean, it is also fun just to sometimes, especially when you're working out in an environment where you have training partners. I think you feel so much more secure. Also, this is something that you see in studies all the time, that people want to impress another, right? And that's why it's like, no, I have that, and I go to failure because I go all out, right? Also to impress your bodies a little bit, right? And by yourself, I think you stay a little bit more level-headed, I would assume, which is not always a good thing, because I think that there is some benefit to having a training partner that always pushes you a little bit, right? But having that on a consistent basis, so for me at least, it would not be the training I would like to do all the time.
Like you periodize your pre-workout, periodize your training partner. Just come in for week 4 with me, please.
A couple of weeks training together with Katie, a couple of weeks together then with you.
And then get Jordan Peters to train you for the last week. There you go. Yeah. Or actually, it's funny because Mike took, I've forgotten his name.
Canyu.
Yeah, that's the one. So Canyu's a member of our group. Fucking insane shape. And Mike took him through a session, and it was really interesting. Like him, part of me wants to think there was a bit of jokes about him like falling over and stuff. He can probably comment on here and say whether there was, but I imagine it actually wasn't a joke at all, and he actually was so fatigued that he couldn't walk properly and fell over, which is ridiculous, to be honest. I don't know when I've ever fallen over because my legs were so bad. I've been close, but never that bad. But he left like 2 RER. And it's like, if he'd gone to failure, would have he even have had as a productive workout? Everyone would think, oh, if you go to failure, it'd have been more productive, but would it have been? I don't know. Would he have been able to do as much volume?
And he still was crippled.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm always saying. Like, do you really think that there is such a huge discrepancy of leaving maybe 2 reps in reserve in comparison to 0 reps in reserve? I mean, these are 2 reps. 2 reps can't make that much of a difference. I mean, how? How should it? Unless you are doing 2 reps only and 0 reps. But other than that, I can't see that there's that much of a discrepancy there. I can't. It just, I can't even comprehend that. How that should be possible. Don't know.
Cool. I have nothing else on this.
Should we take one more?
Okay. I don't know.
We're close to an hour now. This is I don't know. So I can't really say something about this, but this is something that you and Harry actually talked about in the past. So my usual question, so Jonas Linkus, my usual question, HST training, why not do HST? Why isn't it popular anymore? Do you see any disadvantages with HST?
So that's hypertrophic specific training, right? That
Could very
HST?
well. What have you guys talked about here recently?
I don't
You and
remember
Harry?
talking to Harry about it. I think it's hypertrophy specific training. I think that's Brian Haycock, his program.
That could be.
I think.
Don't know.
I'm going to be assuming a lot here, but I actually ran hypertrophic specific training when I was like 18 or something. And I remember I had a training partner and we would do it together. And I had a timer because you had to time your rest periods. There was like drop sets and there was like different phases. I can't remember it enough to recall it. But what I would say is the way I program now is much simpler. And it still achieves every principle of hypertrophy. And it's easier to monitor and adjust things appropriately. Whereas with that program, from memory, it was a lot more sporadic. It wasn't as congruent. It wasn't as methodical and as kind of, it didn't feel like each phase linked to the next one and potentiated it. It felt a little bit all over the place. But yeah, mostly the reason why not is because I've come across an approach that fits the hypertrophic principles as well as I could imagine, and it works. And it's very simple and easy to document progress.
It is Brian Haycock, and I can't say anything about it because I don't know the program. I've never done it. I've never seen it, so can't say anything.
I was on like a type of bodybuilding forum, and someone sent me it, and he used to have a website, and it was all for free on there, like every month. And me and my friend were like, "Why wouldn't you do this? It's hypertrophy specific training," and we followed it. And I remember it being fun, but yeah, the main thing I remember is like drop sets on I think it was like deadlift. I can remember doing drop sets on deadlift, and I can remember using a timer. And this was a time. I don't know how long I did it for. It must have been, I think I just ran it once or something. But for me, yeah, it's a bit more, I think it probably has very good rationale and you could run it, but Brian's a smart man, so.
Yeah, nothing more to add here. We have nothing to plug really. I mean, you can always check out all of our products on our website if you want to. I don't need to plug that.
Black Friday's coming.
Black Friday is coming. We're preparing.
We have a treat.
We are preparing a lot. Other than that, I actually bought a camera now, Steve. I finally am back. Still haven't received it yet, but finally I'm back on track when it comes to stuff like this. And it's been a while since I had a camera in my hands, and I'm probably going to do also a couple of pictures when I have my camera back. I mean,
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Pascal's Instagram is going to blow up.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
I know.
I'm also like, there's a lot of photography that I really find amazing, and it is where I'm coming from originally, right? So, maybe I will get to that, but I don't know what I want to say with that. So, don't know.
I think you were trying to secretly plug something you might use that camera for that might be of the interest to listeners. But
that's true.
I think I kind
porn.
I think I
check me out on Pornhub. What would be my porn name? What would you say? Stallion.
All I could think of was balls to the floor. But that wouldn't be a good one.
There was one guy who is actually balls. So funny enough to end that show with. There was one guy over on Instagram who was always like following me, liking a couple of pictures and unfollowing me again, right? I was always like super annoyed by these kind of people. And though these people are always like fishing for then followers in return, right? And because I wasn't following him in return, he always kept doing that. And his name was Berlin Stallion. And now you can guess what his profession was. Yeah, he was a porn star. And I was just like, why is this guy trying to get me as a follower? So yeah, the name Stallion isn't available for me anymore.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I like balls to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have nothing.
No.
Thank you guys for listening.
Cheers. Talk to you soon.